prayer. Our gracious Father, once again, what a beautiful Sabbath morning. And thank you for your presence among our midst. And thank you for leading us as we are studying this book of John with so much in there, Lord. And only as your Spirit will guide us and be here with us to help us to understand the depth of what's in this book. Thank you, Lord, for being here with us. Thank you for guiding us. In Jesus' precious and holy name we pray. Amen. So we're looking at John chapter 1 and verses 4 and 5. And I'll read it once again. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it, or the darkness did not overcome it. So this is the person of Jesus Christ. This is the person of Jesus Christ. And he is the Word, and here we are told. John establishes who he is, that he's the Word, he's God. And then he tells us, in him, in Jesus Christ, was life. Now, if there's life in Jesus Christ, then there's life also in who? In God. Okay? So God, in him was life, in God was life, and the life was the light of men. Okay? The life that is in God was the light of man, which means to say that this life of God was not in man before Jesus came and revealed it. What does that mean? See? I mean, think of it. In Jesus was life, and in God was life, and the life was the light of men. So the light, God's light, was not in the life of men until the Word came and revealed it. See? So which means to say, prior to Jesus coming and teaching us about life and light, this life and light was not understood as it was in God. Which means to say that prior to Jesus coming, what we believed was that both life and death came from God. See? We believed that both life and death came from God. But we are clearly told that life came only from God. How do we know for sure that death did not come from God? In Hebrews chapter 2 verses 14 and 15 we are clearly told, the person who has the power of death is the devil. That is the person who has the power of death, not God. And we have been so blinded with this deception and lie that we have attributed to God both life and death, when life is only from God, and that life also transcends itself and goes into eternal life. And that's what John is trying to communicate to us. By establishing Jesus first as who he is, then he tells us that in Jesus was life, in God was life. And the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it, or the darkness did not overcome it. Well, the darkness cannot comprehend the life and light of God. Go ahead, John.
But it's strange because what it says, and the darkness comprehendeth it not.
Yes.
It's saying it didn't even understand it.
Yes.
So how could they even begin to change their minds or learn more? They didn't even know what it was about.
Yes, exactly.
It's just impossible for them to understand it.
Yes.
According to this, they didn't even comprehend what it was about.
Yes, so what he's telling us, not until Jesus came was this understanding given.
And that's what he came to do, exactly,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
These are beautiful words, aren't they? How it's all put together. And
You know, if we look at John chapter 1 verses 1 to 18,
yes.
okay, if we study, if we had to just confine ourselves just to looking, and that's what we've been trying to do, but if you take verses, John chapter 1 verses 1 to verse 18, encapsulated in these 18 verses is the totality
Yeah.
of what John writes in the entire book of John, and even in his epistles, you know, even if in his epistles, the whole of verses 1 to 18 is like a
Synopsis?
summary or a very condensed revelation or understanding of the totality of what John writes in the book of John and in his epistles.
I remember when I was in school in the English class, every so often the teacher would say, read the first chapter and then write a précis on it. It was called a précis, a French word, I guess. Write it, sum it up in a few words, what it says. And the whole book, as you say, is in the first 18, all you need to do is write that, and there's tells you everything that there is.
Yes, yes.
The main points.
Of
Yeah.
course, yes. Very true. Very true. Okay? So, what we have to keep in mind is what does John mean by life? Okay? And it's very clear. I mean, quite simply, he means that the life is the opposite of death, destruction, condemnation. That's the opposite. So life is in Jesus, and the light is also synonymous. Life and light are synonymous, okay? See what ends up happening, sometimes we live, let's say we live a Christless life. Then what ends up happening, we do not know what life is. See?
We don't comprehend it.
Yes, we don't comprehend it. We don't. And see what that means is that pretty well all believers in God, whoever they are, whatever group they belong to, all believers in God believe that God is also what? A killer. That he kills evil people, degenerate people, bad people. See? So he's both life and death is in God. And that's not what John is trying to communicate to us in this book. Because he clearly tells us, see, that no one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son who's in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. See? So only Jesus is giving us a true revelation of God. I'm going to, go ahead, John.
Well, just not only do they believe that, but they say it's good that God does that.
Yes.
They think this
Yeah,
is the good
yeah.
way to solve things.
He has
you know?
to take care of evil, so it's good that he does
There's
that.
the good and evil in that tree, and
Yes.
getting it all mixed up and everything, and saying, yeah, that's good that he does that.
So
Crazy.
I'm going to just digress a bit and look at something. When we are clearly told, and I read again from verses 1 to 5, okay? In the beginning was the Word, that's Jesus Christ, and the Word was with God, that's Jesus Christ with God, and the Word was God, okay? Very clear. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Okay? So Jesus comes to this earth born as a human being. He's still divine, but he comes and the incarnation happens, and he comes here in the form, this word becomes a human being, okay? This word became flesh, okay? And this word, when he became flesh on this earth, how was he revealed in the Old Testament?
You dropped a paper.
It's behind you.
Thank you. How was he revealed in the Old Testament? Now pay attention to what I just said, okay? Here on earth, he's incarnated, becomes a human being, and lives among us for that time period. And the word became flesh, okay? The word became flesh and dwelt among us. How do you think he was portrayed at times in the Old Testament?
As a wrathful God.
Yes.
Vengeful.
Yes, very
wrathful,
true. But more in terms
Punishing.
of like the incarnation. He came here as a man.
Well, I was reading in one of I was reading the Bible this week, and what Paul was saying that when the children of Israel, they said, and that rock was Christ.
Yes.
When they were.
Yes.
I can't.
And that rock that followed them
Was Christ.
That rock that followed them was Christ. Paul states that in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 1 to 12.
That's right.
Okay, so the rock that followed them was Christ. But still, keeping in mind, here on earth, he comes and lives among us. And the word became flesh. Jesus Christ, the word, God, became flesh and dwelt among us. Okay? I'm going to read to it, but I'm just asking before I go there to see any other thought comes to your mind. So he comes here as a human being and reveals what God is like, living among us. In the Old Testament.
He came as like an angel sometimes.
There it is. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
See? He came as an angel. And people will say, what are you talking about?
Yeah, he did.
He did come, and I'm going to look at a few passages. We'll spend a bit of time on this, okay? So we're going to look at a few passages in connection with Jesus coming as an angel. Clear.
Right. Mm.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, when he was with Hagar, and she called him the angel of the Lord, and then she called him God or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yes.
And then when he appeared to Abraham, was it as a person or as an angel? I forget.
We're going to look at all of those.
Okay.
We're going to cover this for this reason, because John talks of Jesus, the Word, becoming flesh and dwelling among us. At times in the Old Testament, Jesus himself, the same person, in the Old Testament is portrayed as an angel. First one, if you want, turn to Genesis chapter 22. I'm going to read, okay? I'm going to start. And keeping in mind that we are tying this up with what we have looked at in John chapter 1, verses 1 to 5, okay? And in chapter 22, now it came to pass,
Verse what?
What verse?
from verse 1,
Okay.
chapter 22. Now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, Here I am. Okay? So it's very clear here who is the person? God, right? Verse 2, then he said, Take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Clear, God had told him. Then on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship, and will come back to you. So Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and 2 of them went together. But Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. Then he said, Look at the fire and the wood, and where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide for himself the lamb of a burnt offering. So the 2 of them went together. Then they came to the place of which God had told them, and Abraham built an altar there and placed the wood in order. Then he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And make sure we have clarified very clearly in verse 1. Now it came to pass after this thing that God tested Abraham, said to him, Abraham, and he said, Here I am. So there in verse 1 it's clear, right? And Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. So he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by its horn. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, The Lord Will Provide. Okay? The Lord will what? Provide. As it has said, to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time out of heaven. Okay? And said, By myself I have sworn, says the Lord. Okay? By myself I have sworn, says the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son. Okay? Now we've looked at that. We're going to look at others to make sure this is confirmed. Here, we have clearly seen that the angel of the Lord is no one else but Jesus, and I'm going to look at other verses to confirm this. Okay? Let's go to chapter 31. Genesis. We're going to come back again to some earlier chapters, but let's just go to Genesis chapter 31. And here in Genesis chapter 31, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but we'll look at chapter, let's start at verse 9. Okay? So God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. And it happened at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the flocks were streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. Then the angel of God, okay, verse 11, then the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see, all the rams which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray spotted, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel. What do you think?
Yeah,
See, 31 verse 11 clearly tells us, and then in verse 13, who's this angel of God? He says, I am the God of Bethel.
It doesn't say he was here on earth. It says he spoke. He could have spoke without being here on,
Yes,
or in a dream. Yeah,
Good.
I know you're going to cover that, right?
That's very good, John.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay? So here we've jumped into this verse. Now, go to Genesis chapter 16. Genesis chapter 16, and we'll start with, I wonder if I should do the whole, Genesis chapter 16. Okay, let's do it. We'll start with verse 1. Okay? Genesis chapter 16. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, see now the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go in to my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her. And Abraham heeded the voice of Sarai. Then Sarai, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Then Sarai said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between you and me. Okay? So here, what Sarah is doing. So Abraham said to Sarah, indeed your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please. And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Okay, verse 7. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring in the way of Shur. So now the angel of the Lord is where? Right there with her, right? Okay. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from? And where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants. Who will? The angel of the Lord. I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man, his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then she called the name of, then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. Okay? Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees. For she said, I have also seen here, I have also here seen him who sees me. So, clearly she identifies what?
The angel.
Then she called the name of the place who spoke to her. Who spoke to her? You are the God who sees.
Right.
Satisfied? Clearly she says, you are the God that sees. I'm going to look at one more. Okay? Any thoughts?
Because Ishmael, that's in the Muslims.
Yes.
That's,
The children of Hagar, Ishmael, yes.
yeah,
And God is the one that is saying, I am going to. See? How can they?
Why would God, and he said that Ishmael was going to be a wild man.
Well, he predicted that, what was going to happen. He showed what was going to happen. Okay? Now look at Moses in the burning bush, and that is Exodus chapter 3. Keeping in mind what we read there clearly, I'm just covering a few. Most probably I'll give a message on this whole thing of the angel of the Lord, and that is Jesus in the Old Testament. Okay? Chapter 3. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Verse 2. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of the bush. And from all what we know, before we even go any further reading on this, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of the bush. With all what we have known from before reading any more, who was in that burning bush?
It would have to be Christ, because the fire didn't burn the bush.
Yes.
It didn't consume.
It was Jesus,
Yeah.
God again.
Yeah.
Okay? So here, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of the bush. And everybody knows that who appeared in that flame of fire in the bush was God. But we know who that angel of the Lord is. That's the angel of the Lord. Okay? So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him and from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. Got it? Settled? There it is. See? So Jesus was the angel of the Lord. But see, people kind of misunderstand this, and they say, well, how can Jesus be an angel? How can God be an angel? See? But it's trying to show us, angel is what? It's
Messenger.
Messenger. See? So Jesus came and was dealing with all of these passages we just read as a messenger of God. And there in the New Testament now, when we are looking at the book of John, he is what? Still what? The messenger of God.
Exactly.
Even though he is what? Very clear. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But he came as a messenger of God. Go ahead, John.
I once saw a poster which said the names of Jesus.
Yes.
It was 4 or 5 feet deep by 3 or 4 feet wide.
Yes. Yes.
And there were dozens and dozens of names for Jesus
Yes.
and what he was called.
Yes.
And this must have been amongst them. I don't remember, but
Oh, definitely. That's why I'm saying if you go through, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, he's called a Lion of the tribe of Judah. Just that, take
Yeah.
that, you know.
yeah,
Doesn't mean to say he's a lion.
no.
No.
No, you know, and here, see what I'm trying to get at is we have to make sure that what John is addressing, and very systematically he goes from verse 1, 2, 3, verses 4 and 5, he settles certain issues, then he's telling us that in him, in Jesus Christ, was life. And the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it.